Hey guys, welcome back to Bibliophile Reads. I'm Courtney, and today joining me for my June wrap up. Really excited to chop up with you what I read for the month. This month I ended up reading 12 books, all different genres. This month was not necessarily a struggle, but I was not in a rush to read a whole bunch. I did create a June summer TBR list that quickly fell by the wayside. So if you wanted to check that out for some great summer reads, go ahead and do that. But I didn't read as many of those as I had hoped. However, it was still a really good reading month. So let's start off with the first book. I started off the month with the book Happy Medium by Sarah Adler. She also wrote Mrs. Nash's Ashes. I did not read that book. And I'm using Goodreads, my book descriptions, for support in remembering all of the things. So be sure to check out my Goodreads. I always link it at the end of my video. It's also in my description box if you're interested in following my Goodreads. So I end up giving this book 3 stars. This book follows a woman, what is her name? Gretchen. And she's kind of like a con woman, although it takes a while to like unpack that in the beginning of the story. But she pretends to be psychic and kind of scams people out of that. And there's an older woman that has been coming to her for a while, and she convinces Gretchen to go to a farm where her grandson or something is living in a farm that's been passed down, and he's trying to sell it. However, there's a ghost that's haunting it, and so she sends Gretchen to sort of go down there and get rid of the ghost or find out what's going on so that they could sell this property. Gretchen does go down and meets Charlie. Charlie's a grumpy, and he is not interested in her being on his property. He doesn't believe in ghosts. He thinks that she's a fraud. He doesn't like what she's doing to the old lady, because the old lady totally believes in him, or believes in her, Gretchen. And so it's brutal. But Gretchen does actually hear from a spirit on the land named Everett, and he is part of the family name, the Waybills. That's the last name. So Charlie's great somebody is the spirit haunting the home, and there's like a curse that if you sell the home to somebody who's not within the family, you will die immediately after you sell the home. So the goal is trying to get him to stay and not sell the home. I felt like it was very predictable. I didn't love either character. I was kind of over the grumpy sunshine. It's one of my least favorite tropes because it's like it's unbelievable to go from like I can't stand you to I love you, in my opinion. So I don't love those tropes. And then like usually the grumpy's always too grumpy. It's like a point, it hits a climax of way too grumpy. So 3 stars. I think it would have been great in October to read something like that, because it's kind of cutesy and spooky without being spooky at all. But 3 stars. The next book I read was Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver. This is part of the Ruinous Love trilogy, and this is book 1. I do have book 2, Leather and Lark. I just haven't started it yet. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. I had not anticipated giving it 4 stars. I actually went into it just randomly because I had it on my Kindle. It was on a daily deal one day, and I just picked it up. But it ended up being really good. So in this book, we have, it is a dark romantic comedy. That's what it's listed as. But we have we have Sloane and Rowan, and they are both serial killers who kill serial killers. So they're trying to like right wrongs in a way. And so they are kind of doing the same thing, but they end up sort of on the same trail for the same person and become friends, and then a little bit more. But the thing that I liked about this book is that it is truly a romance book. And yes, they are serial killers, but it's a romance book. It honestly is. So at the beginning of the book, there's a lot of trigger warnings about like gruesome scenes, death, serial killers, Definitely check those out. I did not feel bothered by them, and so I don't know, should I be questioning myself or it just wasn't that bad, but I wasn't at all bothered until about the 80% mark. And I put this in my good notes, is that some of the more detailed things I kind of skimmed at that point, because how many ways can you chop up a body? I don't need to read it over and over and over again. But it was so interesting. I am going to the next book. I liked the couple in this book, and then the second book is a different couple. And I can see that that's going to be cute as well. So highly recommend that one. All right, the next book I read was Babysitters Club number 39, Poor Mallory by Anna Martin. I actually gave this book 5 stars. And have I read this one before? No, this was the first time that I had read it, listed on Goodreads. And so this book is really, really good to me. So this book follows Mallory. It's her story. Her dad has recently lost his job, and everybody kind of panics around how they will make ends meet. If you don't know the world of Babysitters Club, there's 8 kids. There's 8 Pike kids, and so it's obviously going to be tight financially. The mom definitely talks about that. The dad alludes to it, and so they're not really hiding the fact that it'll be tight. However, all the kids start jumping in, try to make some extra money, and try to conserve like the money that they have and the resources that they have. Mr. Pike kind of takes on a really chill approach to being off work. I think for most of us who've been working our entire lives, obviously nobody wants to be fired or laid off, but if you had an opportunity to take 2 or 3 weeks off of work and still get a check, you probably would. So he was kind of just like hanging around the house, enjoying life. And that was a little unsettling for Mallory. Obviously she was seeing her dad just kind of be listless, but also she started having to take on some of the parent duty that I just don't like seeing that trope, but that's what she was doing. And she does babysit, obviously, so she was used to it, but at home it should be the parents. Anywho, the reason why this got 5 stars was because of the social commentary that happened within the story. So aside from what's happening inside the household, there is talk at school about the Pike kids having no money, being poor, being on welfare. And so a lot of these topics are brought up and discussed, and the Pike kids are, you know, ostracized a bit because they don't have the money, or they think that they don't. Ultimately, dad finds a job, everything works out, and I think, I don't know if this is satire or real because I don't remember, but in my favorite podcast, you guys know it's Stuck in Stony Brook, they always talk about, they did say that he had a severance package from his job, and so there was no stress really for everybody. But obviously if you get fired or laid off, well, he got laid off, he would have a severance package. So while they were very concerned and made the kids very nervous, they were probably okay. But I just thought it was a really interesting book. The next book I read was Summer Romance by Annabelle Moynihan. This came out in June. I feel like everybody was kind of talking about it. And we're giving this 4 stars. And this book follows our main character who is recently divorced. She's also just going through general life transitions. Her name is Allie. She is a professional organizer, which is relevant because her life is kind of messy right now. But she goes on a walk with her dog and ends up running into a man who her dog pees on, and that's how they kind of start talking. And then she goes back to the park to try to find him the next day because she thinks he's cute, but they didn't exchange numbers or anything. And love kind of blossoms from there. He is way younger than her, and he's kind of wrapped into the friend group. But I think it's just a really cute romance. It tackles a lot of good subjects. The writing style was really on point. I think when I'm looking on Goodreads, there's a lot of high stars, lots of 4 and 5 stars. I really liked Nora Goes Off Script too, which is her other book. And I'm still trying to get through Same Time Next Summer. But the writing is just really good, and the story was wholesome and well, wholesome's not the right word, but it was just believable. The chemistry was just right. The next book I read was a book called Pardon My Frenchie by Farah Rockin, or Rakan. She has written a couple of books that I've read. Her books always center around some sort of social media frenzy that happens. But in this book, we're following Ashanti, who is an owner of like a doggy daycare slash spa slash like store. And she has been saving money to buy a new, like expand her building. And then the building that she's looking at gets bought by a guy named Thad. Thad's grandmother's dog goes to the doggy daycare, and the grandmother and Ashanti are very close, and the dogs are very close. But the grandmother goes into the hospital for a little bit, and Thad is now taking care of grandma's dog and decides that the dog does not need to go to doggy daycare anymore. They don't want to use that expense. And he quickly finds out that the doggy daycare is so necessary. There's also an element in here about a dog show that the Puddin is the name of the grandmother's dog, usually goes to, and Thad tries to like not do that, but eventually they go. Anyway, the two dogs end up in this really cute moment that gets on social media, which kind of starts tying the owners together, and then it's a romance that all come together. I ended up giving it a 3 because it just didn't hit for me. As you can tell as I'm talking about it, like it wasn't really memorable. Again, it's another enemies to lover. He was pretty cranky, but also as somebody who owns a dog, like he was really rude to the animals. Like he would tell the dog like shut up or get over the, I don't know, just really rude to the animal. And I'm not down with like any abuse, including animal abuse, and the verbal abuse was just like not it. So I understand Thad maybe not being a dog person or not wanting to take care of that responsibility, but like, did we have to go that far? Probably not. Then I read California Girls, which is super special number 5 from Ann and Merton. I gave this 4 stars. And this one was hilarious to me. The premise of this story, it's a super special, so we have all the girls' perspectives. But basically, at the beginning of the story, they have their parents buy a lottery ticket on their behalf, and they win like $10,000 or something. They split it amongst each other and decide to go to California. And Dawn visits her family, brings everybody around, takes them to the We Love Kids Club. And then, of course, as we know, anytime there's boys and surfing, Stacy loses her mind, or boys and beach, she loses her mind, and she does in this book. And then they also kind of help out and babysit. It was pretty cute to me. I gave it 4 stars just for the hilarity of it all. Like, why would they win all of this money? Why would they all go to California? Who's watching them? Why are they also babysitting? Somebody roped Stacy in. Like, all of it was just hilarious. Next up, I came back to The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. I had soft DNF'd this last month, but I was in the middle of waiting for a couple books to come out, and so I picked it up via audio. I ended up giving this book, I'm actually going to edit it. I gave it at the time a 3.75, but I'm going to give it a 2.75 because it was just okay, and I honestly don't think about this book at all. It did start really rough. I highly suggest audio. Like, if you've already paid the money for this book, audio would be your best bet. And let's see. It's just a fake dating trope. The chemistry did end up being really good in the book, but it could have been shorter. There is a weird side quest in the book that wasn't necessary. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But I'm finding a lot of times in these books that we're anticipating, they start taking this weird left turn. And I don't know if it's like a requirement of how many words you need to have, or like there's something off where people just keep adding these pieces to the story just to make them longer, and it doesn't need to be. I would say if you are a Christina Lauren fan and you picked it up or you got it from Book of the Month Club, give it a read. I wouldn't race to buy it. Probably check it out at Libby or something like that, but I wouldn't race and buy it. Next up, I read Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood and gave this 4 stars. I was super excited about this book. And in this book, we're following Eli and Rue. Okay, in this book, Rue and Eli work for different companies, Eli's company is trying to sort of take over Rue's company, and Rue is a biotech engineer at the company Klein. They kind of do something with food or food science, and so they're trying to do like an overhaul of the company, like with evaluators, like sort of quality control, looking into things in an intent to take over. And so think of it like Office Space, the movie, where like people came in, you had to tell people what your job was and why it's important and why they should keep it. They did all of that. But in the midst of this, Eli and Rue start having feelings for each other, and they kind of start an affair. And it's an affair because it's all in secret and in hiding. They're kind of like sneaking into offices and making it very physical, but nothing serious. They both, again, it's a romance. They claim that it's not going to be serious, they're not going to fall for each other. They're just going to have this fun until they figure out whatever happens with the business side of it. Obviously, it's a romance, so they do fall in love, and it goes further. There's also a side quest in this book that, if you've read Ali Hazelwood's books, especially the ones with the sort of the STEM background, there's always like a villain arc in there, and this follows that same pattern. Next up, I read The Rom-Commers by Catherine Center. I also gave this 2.75 stars, and guys, I think I have to stop with Catherine Center. So I started with The Bodyguard from her, from Book of the Month Club a few years ago, really liked it. Then picked up, what's the one where the girl's got the facial blindness. I couldn't get past it because like I didn't understand the facial blindness, like what, it was so convenient. And then we have this Rom-Commers. So, okay, this book, the problem with this book is that the main characters to me did not have chemistry, and the way that it was written was in like a narrated breaking the fourth wall, like in the middle of dialogue, and they're like, well, let me tell you something, like you as the reader. I don't like that at all. But anyway, the main character is Emma. She's a screenwriter. She is asked to help to flesh out a screenplay written by Charlie Yates, somebody she really admires and looks up to. So she's flown out to LA to help. He does not care about the rom-com that he's writing. He's trying to get it done so that he can have his real passion project pushed through, but she's going to help him get the rom-com together. So they're spending lots of time trying to figure this out, bumping heads. She did look up to him, and so when they meet, he is a grumpy, and she's kind of taken aback by that as well. Eventually they do fall in love. And this is why I've been taking breaks from romance, because it's all kinds of ends the same. They do fall in love. However, I just did not like it. I didn't. All right, next up, I read Hope This Finds You Well by Natalie Sue. This just came up randomly on my Kindle, and I decided to purchase it. I gave this 3 stars, and this book is pretty funny and satirical. It follows our main character, who is an admin assistant, and she does not like her job, and she starts writing encrypted mean messages in the emails that she's sending to people, but she writes the text in white, so you can't read it unless you were to highlight it. Well, HR finds out, and she has to do some HR specific training, and it's led by the HR guy Cliff, that's the love interest, and he's not only helping her sort of with her anger, but getting to know her, taking down her wall. But on the side of all of this, she's also they have put restrictions on her email account, her computer, but part of that has given her accidentally access to other people's like Teams messages or whatever, and so she's able to see that everybody's been talking about everybody in the office. It was okay. It was a great, like, almost end of the month book, but it wasn't great. I would say borrow it from the library. All right, the next book I read was The Housemaid is Watching. This is the Housemaid series book number 3 by Frida McFadden. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I thought it was the perfect book that I needed at that moment. It's on Kindle Unlimited. It was fast-paced, and I appreciated that. it was going to be 5 stars for me. It really was. But in this book, it's a little bit different. So we have moved forward maybe about 17 years, and our main character is Millie. She's now living in this like suburban neighborhood. Her neighbors are all in her business. And her one neighbor is very snooty and has a maid and offers the maid to come to Millie's home once a week. Millie's like, no, I don't need a maid. Like, I'll just do all the cleaning. But the maid shows up anyway. She's starting to act weird. She stares a lot. She was caught stealing some things. And Millie fires her. There is a twist with that her husband's involved in that is not cheating. But it was just a weird turn the way he was involved, like he didn't need to be. But ultimately, the title of the book is very deceiving, and the plot twist at the end, the whodunit, was really random. It's also very dark, and it was a topic that I don't particularly enjoy. So I love it was on Kindle Unlimited. I didn't have to pay for it. It was a speedy read, 4 stars, but it just wasn't 5 stars for me. Then I picked up 1 Star Romance by Laura Hankin. This is one of my Book of the Month Club books this month. I ended up giving this a 2.75 as well. It started out really strong for me, but we ended up knowing what was going to happen, and so the book kind of got long for me. But basically, we're following 2 people in a sort of like When Harry Met Sally way. The woman is her friend's maid of honor, and the guy is his friend's best man, and they end up meeting, kind of hitting it off, and then over the years, like every couple of years, they're going to celebrate a new thing for this couple. It's a new house, new baby, whatever, and there's tension when our main character writes a book, a fiction novel, and the guy gives it a 1-star rating. And so they're trying to work that tension out throughout, but obviously it's just built up tension. They like each other. It's a romance. You know how it's going to end. So that one was just okay. And then I ended the month almost the way I started, but it just wasn't, as I'm going over, it just wasn't a great star rating month for me. I read 3 anticipated reads this month, and none of them hit. And so I just feel like we are kind of in that, I don't know, just building up in our own minds how great a book is going to be, and it's not, and so that's a bit frustrating. But I am still excited for July. I already have 1 book finished. I'm reading Reckless right now, and I'm excited to continue to explore a lot of different books. I think the common theme this month is I did end up reading a lot of romances, and I already said I wasn't going to do that, and I can see that mentally I'm not in that space of wanting to read that trope, which is why some of these books fell really flat for me. However, I think it's important that you always do your own research, check out the books that you like, and decide what you want to read. So that is everything I read for the month of June. Comment down below if you read any of these books. What are your thoughts on them? Do you plan to pick up any? Or if you have a really great recommendation, I would love to hear it. Just comment, like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.